Hi everyone, it's Jen from Fiber Me This. Today I'm going to go over the blocking of the Over the Burrow shawl. The blocking for this shawl in particular is extremely important because when you knit a kite shawl, you have to, through the blocking process, define the offset triangle. And by that I mean this side here has a definitive line and the long edge has a definitive line, but this section here where you were no longer doing the increases and then your bind off edge, we have to turn that into a definitive line. So we are going to start by blocking that edge first in a straight line. But before you do that, you want to wet your shawl, remove any excess water, and put in blocking wires all along the edges. And we're going to establish this point here in section 8 after row 143, which is right here. That's where we stopped doing the increases, which started bringing this edge back in toward the center spine there. So that's where we want to make sure that we establish a point. And I'll do a close-up here. You can see I'm running those wires through the little garter ridge along the outside on this edge. I'm doing the same thing, and then for the bind off edge, I just went up and down through that bind off edge. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, like I said, is pin down this section here, which is where we were no longer increasing than the bind off edge. You want to keep in mind that this bind off edge is much more stretchy than these two sides. So another thing I did actually before I'm going to start pinning it down is I just stretched out this edge to its maximum stretch, and then this side as well. Now we don't want to do that here because we have so much more stretch. You want to stretch it out and open it up a little bit, but not to its maximum stretch. And you also want to keep the slip stitch lines perpendicular to the wires. So let me go ahead and pin this down in a straight line. And then what I'm going to do is stretch out the center spine, and I will pin that down, and then I will start pinning down the sides. So let me get going with this, and I'll show you what it looks like when we are done. Also keep in mind the schematic and the pattern is just an estimate. Depending on your gauge and the type of yarn you're using, it could be very different. So it is just a generalization. Okay, so I started with this section here. First I established my point, and then I am stretching it enough to open all of this up. So I'm just looking at this section here, opening up the lace in each section, but not stretching it completely to its full max. And then I am putting my pins in, one on one side, one on the other of the wire, and back and forth. And I am going to continue on using how much I stretched this as my guide for over here, because I know that this has so much extra stretch to it. I just want to open up the work as much as I did on this side. Okay, so I've kind of organized to the right side of the center spine so that it looks somewhat symmetrical to this side. And I put a pin on the end here, and once it looks pretty symmetrical, then I'm just gonna go in and put all my other pins. But if you stretch it out and put your pin down here, it makes it really easy to go back and just fill in all those other pins. And I am trying to get a fairly straight line from my point out to that point. So I'm gonna go in and fill in all those pins now. Okay, so I have this whole side pinned down. And this is looking pretty symmetrical right here in this section. The next thing I do is I come down here and I really give both of these sides, I try and stretch it as much as I possibly can, and then pin my point down, trying to keep that center spine fairly straight. Now you are going to have the center spine isn't going to be completely stretched. You're going to have these buckles, but as we pull out the sides, that will eat up any gathering that is left there in the middle. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I am going to start pulling out. I think I'll start right here, pulling out each side, trying to stretch out any ease that's left in there, and I'll just keep going along the edges. Okay, so I have pinned out this side and that side, and I had to take my pins mostly out of this side so that I could make things nice and symmetrical. I went back in and just threw in some pins. You can see I have the pins pretty far apart over here. I'm just really trying to establish that border, and that's okay. Taking pins in and out while you're blocking is very normal. It really doesn't take that much time, and it's good to spend the time on it now to get the correct shape. So I am going to go back in now and add some extra pins and really try and define that border. It is okay if this has a tiny slight arc to it. You can try and get it perfectly straight if you want, but as long as we're defining this point here and trying to make that triangle shape with having this line as straight as possible, you're gonna have a good result. So that's it. I'm just gonna fiddle around putting all of my pins in now, and then let it sit until it is completely dry. And once you take it off, it will relax just a little bit, but hopefully you enjoy your end product. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at fibermethis@gmail.com.